President-elect Joe Biden was asked about whether he supports increasing the amount of money that will be sent to Americans in the form of direct relief checks. Now, Congress has passed legislation that would provide $600 in relief checks. Donald Trump demanded more. Democrats hopped onto that opportunity, passed legislation overwhelmingly in the House to provide direct checks to Americans to the tune of $2,000. And now it's sitting in the Senate with Mitch McConnell playing all sorts of games to prevent that bill from passing. Now, Joe Biden was asked about this. Where do you stand on relief checks? And honestly, optics-wise, this didn't look good, but he said the right thing. Let's take a look.
Thank you.
Do you support the $2,000 direct payment, sir?
Yes.
Okay, look, he said yes. But it's an important question. There are a lot of people just turn back around and provide a real statement, please. Like, it's just not a good look at all, because it seems like he doesn't genuinely care. And I mean, when you look at how this bill was negotiated and what his involvement was in negotiating the bill, maybe he doesn't really care. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh. What was your read of that, John?
I mean, I think like the way you show that you don't care about something is to walk away while someone is talking to you about it. And to be honest, I had seen the quote that he said, but I hadn't seen the actual video. I assumed that was really all he had to say, but then he moved on to other stuff. Like, turn around and use this opportunity. You're supposed to be the leader of the entire Democratic Party. Show leadership.
No, you're exactly right. And I mean, the optics, again, not good. But you also have to understand what his role was in negotiating for coronavirus relief. Did he play a role? He did. And that was something that was actually reported on by the New York Times in two separate stories. So in one story, it was reported that Biden on December 2nd, through his support behind the $900 billion plan being pushed by the centrist group in the Senate, the total was less than half of the $2 trillion that Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, had been insisting on. And then later, in another New York Times report, we learned about how he did play an active role in the negotiations. Behind the scenes, Biden quietly pushed for lawmakers to strike a compromise that would deliver at least some modest help after months of congressional inaction. He has lavished praise on the bipartisan group of moderate lawmakers who crafted a framework over weeks of video calls, texts, and huddles on Capitol Hill, helping prod leadership out of a months-long impasse and inspiring a flurry of last-ditch negotiations. So he did urge Democratic leadership to at least concede to some of the Republican demands. And keep in mind, when you look at what was in the bill originally, 16 weeks of unemployment benefits, that was later scaled back to only 11 weeks. The $600 direct checks. I mean, at first, there weren't going to be direct checks at all. But then after some arguing and negotiating, there was a $600 proposal, which did eventually pass. But now Americans want more, and they deserve more. They're really suffering right now. And so Biden's whole thing is, all right, just get this framework passed, provide people some relief now. And then once I'm in office, we'll do more. But how? Are you going to use your executive authority to do more? Because remember, Trump did provide $300 in, federal unemployment benefits through executive action. Is Biden willing to do that? Is Biden willing to do that and go bold with $600 a week, which I think Americans desperately need right now? I don't know. But if he thinks that he's going to get policy passed through Congress, I mean, he's delusional. I think he's delusional about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that he is to some extent getting involved. Going forward, I have no idea what's actually going to happen after this. I mean, people say that there's the possibility of legislation. I know that, like, in theory, a lot of it is going to ride on what ends up happening with the future of the Senate. Certainly, like, we have this massive obstacle that in theory could go away. But even if it did, they could filibuster. Like, they could still possibly block it if they really wanted to. And you know, they seem to be so disinterested in passing aid even now, where in theory they could get credit and Donald Trump could get credit since he's still in office. The idea that they're going to be more willing to go along under Biden, I just don't see why we would believe that. People that we trust, including Bernie Sanders, thinks that there is the chance of legislation later on. So I guess there is a chance, but I don't have much faith in it.
Yeah, I know. I just think, you know, that call that was leaked with civil rights leaders, where Biden answered the question about using his executive power, and he essentially, you know, shot that down. That's worrying. And in recent interviews that we've talked about on this show, he genuinely believes he can persuade Republican lawmakers to pass bold policy. Now, I think he can work with Republican lawmakers to concede to what they want and pass that kind of policy. He's done that historically, but he knows what the obstruction is like. I mean, he served in the Obama administration. The entire first term was all about obstructing what Democrats were trying to do, what the Obama administration wanted to accomplish. There's no reason to think that things are going to be any different during his administration, especially since, I mean, the country feels even more divided now than it was back then. So I think Democrats need to fight right now. Get those $2,000 direct checks to Americans right now. And don't rely on what could happen in the future, like some fantastical idea about, you know, Republicans coming to their senses and doing the right thing. I just don't think it's going to play out that way.
Well, yeah. And however divided we are as a country, when it comes to our elected officials, in particular, our senators, like first of all, they're going to need to show that they're the resistance or whatever, you know, because Biden's coming in, he's a radical socialist, he was put there by China, so they need to show that they're against him. Plus, all of their base thinks that Biden isn't going to be a legitimate president anyway, so going along with him would be being part of the commie plot. Plus, in like a year and a half, they're going to start, you know, like jockeying for position for the presidential run. So like there might be a tiny little narrow window where maybe he could get some of them to cross over, but he's going to be dealing with the election was fake thing. If he has any belief whatsoever that he's going to be able to work with these people, he needs to figure out some sort of alternative plans. And when he is saying that he's already planning to be a little bit hands off and a little bit shy when it comes to executive orders and things like that, that makes me incredibly worried considering the political environment that I feel like we're entering into.